Hey everyone, it's Marco from the DeGroup Finance and Investment Council, and today's lesson is called What If You Knew How to Use Excel? So, if you look at the forecast part of my screen under the Data tab, you can see something called What If Analysis. This is a really useful tab that you should be familiar with, so I want to teach you that. And then I'm also going to show a quick, cool little feature in Excel, as well as some other functions today. So, again, this agenda is interactive, so you can skip to what you want, but let's start off with the Data tab and Stocks. So right here, you could see I have a little comps layout here with financial institutions, and I want to pull up some Canadian banks. So let's see, we have Royal Bank of Canada, we have Scotia Bank. Actually, I believe it would be Bank of Nova Scotia. We have CIBC, we have BMO, we have TD, and we have National Bank. So if I end up highlighting these here and I do Alt A D1 Enter, what's this going to end up doing is it's going to allow me to quickly pull up some important information about all of these companies to create a quick kind of like comparable method to see what the price to earnings ratio of these companies should be trading at. And so let's take a look. We have National Bank of Canada, and we're trying to find it. Well, it didn't actually find it when I clicked stocks, but I can just click select here, and there we go. So this is going to be really useful. Let's say somebody approaches you on DFIC and they're like, hey, we're screening these companies. I really need you to find some quick information for me, and we want to see if they're undervalued or not. So how I ended up narrowing this down is I looked at, okay, well, what are the Canadian or what are the financial institutions? Let's assume that that's what the person wants you to look at. Then they want you to look for Canadian banks. So now I'm going to look for Canadian banks that are around the same market cap, and I'm going to compare them in terms of price to earnings ratio to see if the bank that I want to potentially purchase is undervalued or overvalued compared to their peers when we're looking at a price to earnings ratio, which is going to be used for comparison purposes. So this is just a fun little function. It's not in the what if analysis part, but I really wanted to show you guys how to use this. So if we look over here, there's this little icon that appears, and I'm sorry that I'm using my mouse, but I'm going to have to for the insert data. So I click here and I get a bunch of options. So I can really just fill out this whole chart here by just using this stocks function on data. It's not 100% reliable, and I don't want you to constantly use it, but for small things like this, it's a really useful function. So let's take a look. We have RBC, and let's see, what is our stock price? Because that's what I'm looking for. So I hit price. There we go. Share price comes in. I want the ticker symbol as well. So I look, I just scroll down. Okay, there's ticker symbol. I want the market cap as well. So let's take a look. Let's see what our market cap is. There we go. And then we're going to have price to earnings. So let's try and find that. There it is. And so the first thing I'm going to do Command X, Command V. That's going to bring price to earnings over here. And the only reason that I did that is because I didn't want it in this little space. Now, the next thing you're going to note here is I don't want this actually in millions. I just want to show it in millions. So what I'm going to do is just divide. And I have that up here, so you can just lock. Apologies. You can just divide by cell D1. And we're just going to lock it down by hitting F4. And there we go. So there's the market cap in millions. We have our price to earnings ratio, which I want to format differently. So if I click Control 1, Custom, I'll probably go with 1 decimal place, toss an X there. There we go. So now what I'm going to do is I want all this information for all of the banks, right? So I just do Command C. Take this, and from last lesson, all ESF formulas, and there we go. So these are all just formulas quickly filled out. We have the comms table. Now let's say we want to find our upper quartile. So if I type in quartile, which is the function, and I choose my array, which is our price to earnings ratio. And let's say your portfolio manager says, okay, I want to see what the upper quartile is. Well, I'm just going to click 3. That's the third quartile. And now let's say they want the average. So I can just type in average, highlight this information. And let's say I want the lower quartile. So if I do quartile here, take my array, and I want the first quartile, which is 1. And there we go. So we can see really just on a really simple basis here for comparative purposes only, the mean of the top 6 banks in Canada in terms of their price to earnings ratio, who all have similar market capitalizations operating in the same segments, have a price to earnings ratio of 7.67. So that's all I really wanted to show you. It's a fun function. If you have your own portfolio, you can track your book versus current prices using this, as well as always have an active running list. And it updates semi-daily throughout Yahoo Finance. So let's get more into the lesson now. And this is using what-if analysis, and we're looking at IKEA. So on the left here, I have IKEA for you. And let's say you are doing a consulting case, okay? And so what we're looking at here is the person's going to tell you IKEA is trying to figure out what is the optimal amount of chairs sold to maximize their profit for a new product line that they could potentially be doing. So we have here some assumptions which are given to us. Now notice what I have. I have assumptions in blue and I have formulas in black. So if it's not a formula other than what's over here, it should be in blue, and if not, it should be in black. Okay? So the consulting person tells you, listen, IKEA is going to roll out a new desk which is specifically built for students, and they need chairs for this. So they want to sell 1,000 chairs. It costs them, they're going to sell it for you or to you at $150 a chair. It costs $50 a chair. And right now, this IKEA store, they have rent and they have payroll, so they got to consider that as well. So what we constructed here is a very simple profit and loss statement. Essentially revenue, if I click F2, you can look in the formula. I'm doing chairs times price. Cost of sales is essentially chairs times cost per chair. When I subtract these two, I get my gross profit. Our selling, general, and admin, if we just sum the store rent and payroll, that's $60,000. And when I subtract, I get an operating profit of $40,000. So now you know that if you sell 1,000 chairs with these current assumptions, you're going to have an operating profit of $40,000. So what if somebody says, okay, well, I want to know what about if we sell 500 chairs, or if we sell 600 chairs, or what if we sell 700 chairs? So this is when it's really going to be time consuming for you to go in here and change this to 500 and tell the person the answer, right? It doesn't really make any sense. So I'm going to show you how to make a data table, and this is using the what if analysis. So the first thing that we're going to look at is a one-way data table. It's called a one-way data table because essentially we're only going to be changing information in the columns. So let's say we have 500 chairs. Let's say the person says they can make, we have our 1,000. What about 1,500 chairs? Maybe the IKEA can make 2,000 chairs, or maybe they can make 3,000 chairs. So essentially, all I need to do is I need to highlight this information. And before I do that, let me just show you this cell in the data table is referencing a calculation that we already did. So profit, we are looking for profit. I'm just referencing profit. And then I'm given all this information, which we just inputted over here. So if I highlight this information and I go to my what if analysis and I hit up the data table, I'm going to look at a column. My column input cell that I want to be changing is chairs, right? We're recalculating profit based on a changing amount of chairs. So if I just go over to cell B5, shares sold, click OK. And now you may be looking at this and wondering what the heck, like why didn't anything happen? Most likely you have your workbook set up so it's automatic but not for data tables. So if you just click Alt FB, it's going to recalculate, and there we go. So data tables one way are very easy to make. All I did was link a formula, and then I changed the variable in the column, and it allowed me to see the operating profit at 500 shares sold, 1,500, 2,000, and 3,000 extremely quickly. So now I'm really able to see, wow, this is great. Now I know how to maximize the operating profit if I have a capacity up to 3,000 shares. I know exactly how many I should be making. Well, I should be making a profit of 240,000, right? That's obviously the best choice here. And you can use this in a lot of different scenarios. So for example, you could have, if you were doing a valuation, you could have the stock price, and what if you discounted it at different weighted average cost of capital? Or what if you wanted to purchase something and you had different multiples going down? Instead of recalculating every single time, you can make a data table. So I want you to pause it here, and I laid out a blank template here for cost per share and profit. So in this case, I want you to record, or I want you to complete a one-way data table, and you're going to see what the profit is at different costs per share. So right now we have 150. So what if we had 100? Well, maybe we'll do 150 again, 200 and 250. So pause the video and then I'll walk you through how to complete it. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to end up linking the operating profit, B7. So the exact same as what we did in the first one-way data table. Now we need to highlight the area of the table. Let's go back to the data tab, which is Alt A and then W for what if, data table. We know we're using a column, so let's look. We are looking for our cost per share. This is what's going to be varying. And I hit OK. And now again, just because of formulas, there we go. So we can see if they increase the cost per share past 50, they're actually not going to make a profit. So this is really useful information for a lot of managers, as well as people who may be negotiating prices, right? So this is just a simple way to use a data table. And again, I could just change this information. So let's say I wanted to do maybe 25, 50, how about 55 and 56? So what I have to do is delete this information that we already used. And let's try this again. So if I do Alt A W T column input, we're changing the cost per share, enter, and then let's just get this formula to calculate. There we go. So it's not too bad. Obviously, it's best if they could get the cost per share down, but you're really able to see quickly how changing the cost per share up is going to semi-dramatically increase our or decrease our profit, that is. So now let's look at a two-way data table. So in the one way, we only had a row with columns. Now we need to have a row with columns and rows as well. So we have two variables that we're looking at. So if you want to speed this up too, we'll just change our calculate options to automatic and not automatic except for data tables. So let's take a look at how we would do this. I randomly chose these numbers, okay? So we originally had 1,000 shares. I put in potentially they could have 1,000, maybe 750, maybe 500, 1,250, and 1,500. You could really change these to whatever you want, and the premise of what I'm trying to teach you isn't going to really change. The price, again, we started off with 150, so I just varied it going down. Doesn't really matter what you set it here. I'm just trying to show you how to use this function because you may not be using it for IKEA and chairs sold. So let's take a look at what to do. I'm going to highlight this table the exact same way as we did in one-way data table. I'm going to do Alt-A-W-T, data table. So now we have two options, a row and a column. Our row is chairs sold. So I'm going to select chairs sold. And our column is the price. So now I'm going to select the price. And I'm going to click OK. And there we go. Now you can see there's actually something pretty cool happening. There's 10 options highlighted. And now you may be wondering, why are these options highlighted? That's kind of weird, right? That didn't happen before. Well, I ended up using conditional formatting, which is found on the home page. And I ended up using the top bottom rule. I used the top 10 items. And I wanted to end up using a green fill with dark green text. So why is this useful? So again, let's say you're in an interview and you end up completing your model, and now you need to create a sensitivity analysis at different prices or different share prices, different WACs, etc. Right? By using conditional formatting, I'm able to see what the 10 best options are essentially for IKEA in this case. Right? So this is honestly extremely useful, and it's just something I wanted you guys to be aware of. So I ended up, again, creating a blank template, this time using the chair sold and cost per chair. Again, kind of just like the one way. I want you to pause the video. I want you to complete this data table. And I want you to figure out how to do conditional formatting. So it highlights the top 10 choices in green. And one thing that, if you're wondering, in the first scenario, we had that 40,000, right? Where's that link? I didn't fully explain that. That link is in the left portion here. You always have to have that. So you have the formula, and then all I have is a row with some information and then a column with some information. So pause the video and give it a try. Okay, so now let's take a look at what to do. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do conditional formatting. So if I just end up highlighting this area here, right, and I do Alt, Home, L, conditional formatting, T, and I want the T top 10. I don't want light red fill. I'm just going to click in here, change this to green fill with dark green text. So there we go. That's going to conditionally format our answers. Now I want to do the two-way data table. So I'm going to highlight the area. I'm going to do Alt, A, W, T, row input. Well, our row is our chairs sold. There we go. Our column input is our cost per chair. So there we go, cost per chair. Click enter, scroll down, and there we go. Now you can notice it's not the same shape up here because obviously the top 10 is going to vary every time you calculate with different variables on your X and your Y axis here. So that's why conditional formatting is a really useful function to use in conjunction with sensitivity analysis. So that's how to make a one-way and a two-way data table. Again, there's so many functions that you can, or so many ways that you can use this. Don't just think that it's limited to this IKEA chair example. You could use it pretty much in every management decision problem. A lot of stock pitches use it as well. If you're doing a real estate case as well and you want to vary some variables, anytime you have variables that may change and you want to see how it impacts your final result, use a two-way data table or a one-way data table, and you can thank the DFIC club later. So now let's take a look at the final little lesson here, and that is using goal seek. So what we have here is goal seek, and this is just a little leveraged buyout scenario that I ended up creating. So let's say we have a company worth $100, and they're going to get sold for $200. We're going to end up doing a leveraged buyout for this company. So all a leveraged buyout means is we're going to end up using debt to end up fund the acquisition so we can amplify our results through leverage when we sell. But that's not important here. What is important is first, it's this. This is a little mini lesson that I wanted to teach you. So essentially, I could just type year and I could type 1, or I could type year and 1. But let's say you just needed to combine text in a cell for some weird reason. If you do equals quote year space and then you can go up to the 1. There you go. You have year 1. So let's say your manager came in and originally they said they wanted it saying year 1, and then they changed it and they're like, no, I want it to say 1, or they said I want it to be year entry. I just have the cell linking there. So it's not really part of the lesson, but it's just a cool function I wanted to show you. And I did that for all of them here. So let's see, we have a return multiple of 2 times and an IRR of 15%. So this isn't a leveraged buyout lesson, so I'm not going to go into the explanation of IRR or anything. I'm just going to show you goal seek. So let's say your manager comes up to you and they say, okay, I need a 20% IRR. Now, you're just going to have to guess if you're just changing the multiples in here, or you're changing the sale value to get that 20%. And it could take a long time. What you could do is you could use goal seek by going into what if, hitting goal seek, and I want to set value, the IRR, cell G14. I want to set it to 20%. So I enter in 0.2. And the only way I'm going to do that is by negotiating the sale price with the company, because they're worth 100. So that's just irrelevant. If we're going to buy it from them, we can try and negotiate that 200. So let's try and change that. So we're going to set cell, there we go, G14, 20% by changing cell D4. Hit OK. And there we go. So if we sell the company at $249, we will have a 20% IRR. So essentially, this is a really interesting way to find different values very quickly. So even if we use the data table example, I could say, okay, your manager says, I need an operating profit of $50,000, and it needs to depend on how many chairs we sell. Well, I could go into goal seek. I could set operating profit. I could set it to $50,000, which is what I wanted. And I could do that by changing chairs sold. And there we go. So essentially, I have to sell 1,100 chairs in order to have 50,000 in profit. So that's another really easy way to use goal seek. Very useful in leverage buyouts, very useful again in management or other problems where you quickly need to find out, okay, if I want the result to be a specific number, then what can I change and how can I get there very quickly? And you would use goal seek. So hopefully this lesson was helpful for everyone and you learned some little tricks inside of there, such as the stocks, conditional formatting, and combining text along with numbers or cells. And we'll see you at the next lesson.